Oh! Oh! Oh!
All right, we're on.
Ready, Phil?
We're on in 5, 4.
When the clock struck 6, it meant one thing for Ron Burgundy and his news team. Go time.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of News Flash. This is Motorboating with Mammeries, Tanks for the Mammeries, playing World of Warships. And today I'd like to give you the news update on World of Warships Patch 0.4.1, as well as the launch from open beta to public, which will take place on September 17th, which is, about 12 days from now. That is coming up, and that is when the North American server will see the Tirpitz on sale in the port and in the gift shop. So without further ado, we're going to have a little bit of gameplay in the background running while I talk about some of the things that are coming up in patch 4.1, which is actually live right now for you guys. So let's just get right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is the fact that ranked battles have now been added into World of Warships. Ranked battles will take place when you reach Captain Skill Level 9. Most of you who've been watching these videos for a while or who've been playing the game for a while have probably gotten to Captain Skill Level 8, where you have flags and you have the camouflage and things like that. Well, Skill Level 9 will get you to ranked battles. Ranked Battle is a new game mode aimed at allowing you to match yourself against other similarly skilled captains. That means people with the same sort of win rate and things as you have. Ranked battles are available during regularly scheduled season. The launch of the first season will be announced in the near future. I'm announcing it now. It is going to start on the 17th of September. Ranked battles become available once you've reached Service Record Level 9, which is your Captain Skill Level 9. Battles take place in a 7 versus 7 format on Domination mode only. At this point in time, it is a 7 ship versus 7 ship format in Domination mode only. Each team may have no more than 1 aircraft carrier and no more than 2 battleships. The tier of ships that may participate in ranked battles are governed by the rules of the ranked battle season. Right now, it is ships in tier 6 or higher, is what I've seen on the test server. So that may change here in when it goes to public launch, but for now it was tier 6 and up. In ranked battle, you will be awarded a star for each victory. You're promoted to the next rank once a certain number of stars have been earned. In the case of a defeat or a draw, you may lose ranks or stars depending on if you're the lower or the upper ranks. So if, say for example, you've won your first ranked battle, you get 1 star, and then you play your next ranked battle and you lose or draw, you will lose that star. If you've just reached the next rank, in other words, you've won 2 battles and you move on to the next rank, and you lose that next battle, you will drop back down to the previous rank. I think this is going to be really frustrating. I played it quite a few times in the test, and I'd win a game, and then I'd lose a game, I'd win a game, I'd lose a game, so I'd get a star, lose a star, get a star, lose a star. I couldn't, it was tough. But anyway, I think it's going to be interesting. It'll probably be pretty fun as well. And I like the fact that they're going to put you against people at sort of the same skill level, and that they're going to limit the number of aircraft carriers. For achieving certain ranks, as well as for your final rank during the ranked battle season, you will get rewards like in-game goods. Ranked battles will take place on the following maps: New Dawn, North, and Fault Line. Speaking of maps, there's a couple of new maps coming out, as well as some corrections or fixes to existing maps. They fixed various components in the following maps: New Dawn and Fault Line. They disabled the initial diagonal placement of teams and the domination mode on the hotspot map. For new maps, we have a new map called Strait. This is an Italian coast-style map where in 1940, for the first time ever, heavy ships were attacked solely by carrier-based aviation. This was the British attacking the Italian fleet. This operation the British launched against the Italian fleet inspired the Japanese massive assault on Pearl Harbor. Later on in 1943, the Allied fleet supported Operation Husky, Operation Avalanche, and many other operations of great importance in Europe when they moved from North Africa to Sicily and from Sicily into Italy to begin to knock the Italians out of the war. So this map, straight, is going to end up looking like the Italian coastline. The size is 36 by 36 kilometers. The battle modes for this map are going to be standard and domination, and the domination map will have 3 key areas. The next map that they brought in is a map called Solomon Islands. And Solomon Islands is a map inspired by the Pacific Ocean campaigns that were carried out during World War II in the vicinity of the Solomon Island archipelago. Battles continued from 1942 until 1945. During 1942 and 1943, the largest sea battle, the Guadalcanal campaign, took place in the waters of this archipelago. A strategically important airport, Henderson Field, is located on Guadalcanal Island. After the battle, the President Franklin Roosevelt said it would seem that the turning point of this war has at last been reached. This is going to be a jungle-type South Pacific-style map with islands heavily covered in palm trees and things like that, and lots of islands to hide behind. The size is 30 kilometers by 30 kilometers, and the modes are standard and domination, and there'll be 3 areas for domination on that map. Some other changes that have been made are from Matchmaker. They've implemented, thank God, they've finally done this. They've implemented a mirror balance for aircraft carriers in the term of number and tier in almost all cases. The cases where they don't have the mirror balance for aircraft carriers is when waiting time in a queue is longer than the maximum time allowed. So that's when Matchmaker begins to go outside its basic parameters and say, well, I've had these guys waiting for 5 minutes now, so if I do this and this, can I get them in a battle? And so it will begin to loosen up the parameters by which it matches people together. However, during normal times, mirror balance will be in effect, and that's where you get 1 aircraft carrier per team or 2 per team. They'll be of the same tier, so that there's no more of this one side has 1 carrier, the other side doesn't have any, or where one side's got a carrier that's 2 tiers higher, and so its fighter planes are much better than the carrier on the enemy team. There's an implementation of a limit on the number of battles you can have where your ship tier is lower than the level of battle, which is good. Also, Matchmaker is going to begin to distribute destroyers more evenly between the teams, thank God, where one team used to have 1 and the other team had 4. So they're going to start trying to do more distribution of destroyers evenly. Next, there are some general ship changes that I'd like to talk to you guys about. And some of these ship changes don't actually affect the performance of the ship. They're just a way that Wargaming has changed the parameters in port that describe certain functions of the ship. For example, in port, the AA characteristic scale has been changed. Anti-aircraft effectiveness has not been adjusted except where noted in specific ships, but the rating system itself has been condensed. That means that the anti-aircraft rating for most of your ships will change. But don't panic, everybody. Nothing about the actual AA performance or AA and fire in general has been affected. It's just an adjustment to the rating metric itself. There are specific ships where the anti-aircraft fire performance has been changed, and I'll describe that a little further on the video here. But just so you know, in port, all of the anti-aircraft characteristic scales on the little thing on the right-hand side, the box on the right-hand side, that's changed. For Japanese ships, the chance of setting enemy ships on fire is set at the maximum for 200mm and 203mm caliber guns. All other smaller guns have a lower chance of setting enemy ships on fire. So the big guns on the Japanese ships, the fire chance is set on maximum. For all other caliber guns, it's not quite as much. For all destroyers, the casemate resistance to damage was decreased to match the respective hull values. For all destroyers, they added a 4th point where fires may potentially be started. Every destroyer had 3 points previously where fires could be started. Now they have 4. For all ships, increased gun accuracy at close quarters. And that means that at distances of 0.2 kilometers to 4 kilometers, so that's 0.2 kilometers to 4 kilometers, there's an increase in close quarter gun accuracy. That results in minor increase of accuracy of fire at medium and long distances as well. The value of a hit in the middle part of a destroyer was reduced to match the value of a hit in the bow and stern of these ships. Now alpha strike damage to the bow, stern, superstructures, and central part of the ship will not differ. For all ships, they changed the display in the rudder shift time. The time itself remains the same. The change affects the display only. So again, whatever rudder shift time you already have on your ship stays the same. They're just changing the display. The engine boost ability no longer affects the visibility of ships. Just so you know, it used to be that if you hit the engine boost, it would make your ship more visible, but it doesn't anymore. Now here's some changes to consumables that I think are pretty good. They extended the duration of the hydroacoustic search consumable from 40 seconds to 90 seconds. I use that on occasion, but not normally. For U.S. destroyers, they extended the duration of the smoke charge from 20 to a range between 22 and 30 seconds, depending on the tier of the destroyer. So whatever used to be at 20 is now, you know, somewhere between 22 and 30 seconds, depending on the tier of the American destroyer that you have. The lifetime of a smoke screen produced by smoke charges has also been extended from 65 and 97 seconds, depending on the tier of the ship, to 106 to 130 seconds. So it used to be the duration of a smoke screen was 65 to 97 seconds. It will now be between 106 and 130 seconds, depending on the tier of destroyer that you have. Let's talk about some of the American ship changes that are going to be taking place now. Beginning at Tier 4, they've introduced defensive fire consumable. It used to be for higher tier ships. It's now going to start at Tier 4. For the destroyers Farragut and Benson, the anti-aircraft defense-oriented hulls are now available for research. And that's a good idea, because later in the war, especially after sort of the early Guadalcanal campaigns and Solomon Island campaigns, later American destroyers were used as anti-aircraft picket defense ships, so they were set out from the fleet. And as the war went on towards Iwo Jima and Okinawa, when the Japanese really began to use a lot of kamikaze aircraft, these destroyers were the tripwire for finding these aircraft kamikaze fleets coming in to attack the 3rd or 5th fleet for Spruance and those guys. So the destroyers were given a significant boost in anti-aircraft guns and things like that, and so I think this change is reflecting some of the later war U.S. destroyer capabilities. So the Farragut and Benson will get any increased anti-aircraft defense-oriented hulls now, and those will be available for research. The top anti-aircraft defense-oriented hulls of U.S. destroyers will receive the defensive fire consumable. So when you research that hull and you get it to its top anti-aircraft configuration, you will be able to use a defensive fire consumable. They fixed a bug related to the high detectability of the Bliss-Levitt Mark 7 Mod 2A torpedoes. So the detectability range on those torpedoes has dropped from 1.6 kilometers down to 1 kilometer. So the older U.S. torpedoes that were visible much further out than they should have been have now been fixed to have a visibility rating at 1 kilometer. The Cleveland, they fixed some incorrect armoring on the Cleveland of the 6-inch gun turrets. The armor, the bottom side of the turret was increased from 37 millimeters to 38 millimeters, big whoop, and the armor to its rear side was decreased from 37 to 25. So the turret's armoring has had a change to it, and it's going to be the same with the next ones that I discuss as well. The Baltimore had incorrect armoring on its 8-inch turrets. The bottom armoring was increased from 19 to 38, and the rear armoring was increased from 37 to 38. The Wyoming had incorrect armoring on its 12-inch guns, turrets, the turrets when they're mounted on the stock hull. So the stock hull turret armoring was incorrect on the 12-inch guns. The bottom part of the turret armor was decreased from 60 to 38, and the armor of its upper part was decreased from 160 to 76. The Wyoming also had reduced the traverse speed of its main turrets, so that's changed. They have also decreased the traverse speed of the 12-inch Mark 7 guns to 3.5 degrees per second. So that's pretty important, guys. That's you can turn the turrets faster now on the 12-inch guns, 12-inch 50 Mark 7 guns. Also, the Wyoming has a changed stock hull modification. The firing range with a stock hull was reduced from 12.5 13.79. Oh, sorry. Let me fix that. The Wyoming stock hull firing range has been reduced from 12,790 to 10,965 meters. The viewing distance with the stock hull was reduced from 20 kilometers to 17.71. So the 12-inch guns in the Wyoming are now only going to fire out to 10,965 meters. The Omaha, Marblehead, and Phoenix have some changes to the 152 millimeter guns. The shell was changed. The original armor-piercing Mark 27 Mod 2 shell was replaced with the armor-piercing Mark 27 Mod 5 shell. This effect changes those cruisers. The Omaha, the Marblehead, and the Phoenix. The Omaha and the Phoenix have a new type of shell added. The Omaha has increased firing range for the top hull, which is the C hull. This same increase is applied to the Murmansk, so both the Omaha and the Murmansk have got the increased firing range because it's basically the C hull. The Omaha has a bug fixed related to the firing range from the top hull. The firing range was increased from 11,500 meters to 13,465 meters, so you got an extra 2,000 meters almost. And the viewing range for the top hull was increased from 18.39 to 21.8 kilometers. The New Orleans has a bug fix related to the power of its anti-aircraft defenses. The power of the stock anti-aircraft defenses, which are the 40mm Bofors guns at medium AA engagement distance, has undergone a twofold reduction. So the effective power at middle range engagements with the stock hull anti-aircraft guns has been reduced by a factor of 2, and that's on the New Orleans, which means you're going to want to get to the next level of hull as soon as you can. The Samson, they have an increase in the traverse speed of the main battery guns from 10 to 11 degrees per second. The Samson and Wix increased rate of fire and main battery traverse speed. The Wix has an increased traverse speed of its main battery guns from 10 to 11.5 degrees per second. The Wix converted the Bliss-Levitt Mark IX torpedoes into a researchable model. So we have new torpedoes to research on the Wix. The Nicholas added the defensive fire consumable to the B hull instead of the engine boost consumable. The Farragut Hull C became optional for research. On this hull, the engine boost consumable is replaced with defensive fire, as I was talking about before, by increasing the U.S. destroyer's anti-aircraft defense capabilities. The Mahan has added defensive fire consumable to the B hull instead of the engine boost consumable. The Benson C hull is optional for research now. On this hull, the engine boost consumable is also replaced with defensive fire. The Gearing, the defensive fire consumable is available in addition to the engine boost consumable. The Sims, they separated the engagement areas of the Browning M2 50 caliber machine gun and the Orkalon AA machine guns. The total engagement power has not changed, it's just the engagement areas. The firing range of the Orkalon machine gun remains the standard 2.1 kilometers, while the firing range of the Browning M2 machine guns is reduced from 1.2 kilometers to 0.9 kilometers as compared to the previous range. The Sims, they added the option to mount torpedoes. I'm not sure I understand what that means. Maybe a different kind of torpedo. The Sims will also get defensive fire consumable in addition to the engine boost consumable. The Sims added alternative torpedoes. I guess so. Okay, so if they added alternative torpedoes, you get to choose. The South Carolina, they fixed a bug that prevented damage to the 12-inch 45 Mark V gun turrets. And I do have a correction. Sorry, guys. I did make a mistake a minute ago. Let me go back and fix that since you people will catch me in it. They have reduced the traverse speed of the Wyoming guns. So, in other words, they don't turn as fast. They actually turn slower now. So, just to let you know, the guns on the Wyoming will turn slower. Everybody, welcome to World of Warships. This is Tanks with Mammeries, playing Motorboating with Mammeries. Alright, moving on to the Japanese. There's a lot of changes to the Japanese squadron configurations of aircraft carriers. And I'll go through them, but, you know, if you don't want to hear about those, you will be able to skip ahead. I'll talk about some of the other ships first before I get into the aircraft carriers. There's nothing in here that notes any changes to the American aircraft carriers. So, You know, I don't know if there's changes to that or not. I'll dig up some more information, see what I can find out. But basically, for Japan, for ships without obvious superstructures, they've increased by 10% the distance of surface detection, and this primarily affects the Japanese aircraft carriers that don't really have an island or a superstructure. That would include the Hosho, the Zuho, and the Ryuho. So 10% increase in detection distance, surface detection distance for those aircraft carriers. They've modified the flight control module now. Each research path offers at least one group of fighters for the Japanese carriers. They've increased the turret traverse speed of certain Japanese destroyers. They have excluded the 533mm Type 89 torpedo from researchable modules. They've reduced the national bonus related to the profitability of setting fire for all shells except for, as I mentioned previously, the 200 and 203mm shells. So the fire bonus for Japanese has gone down except for the 200 and 203mm shells. Increased aircraft servicing time and takeoff and landing time for Japanese carriers. Increase the traverse speed of the 120mm guns from 4 degrees per second to 6 degrees per second. This change affects the Wakatake, Minakaze, and Mitsuki destroyers, so you're going to have a better traverse time on those guns. Increase the traverse speed of the 127mm Type C guns from 5 degrees per second to 6 degrees per second, which affects the destroyers Fubuki and Kagero. So again, faster turn time on the guns for the Fubuki and Kagero. They increase the range of the 450 Type 42 Mod 1 torpedoes from 4.5 to 5 kilometers. This change affects the destroyers Tachibana and Umikaze. They've increased the arming time for the Type 1 Mod 1A torpedoes from 2.5 seconds to 3 seconds. This change affects all Japanese aircraft carriers. So if you launch close in, you will have some trouble with that. Launch a little further out if you're doing manual launches. The Hosho, due to the readjustment of the visibility system, they've increased the detection and identification distances seen from the water surface from 7.9 to 8.82 kilometers. Zuho, due to the readjustment of the visibility system, the surface detectability range has changed from 8.46 to 9.18 kilometers. The Zuho, the change, they've changed the flight control for the Type 5 mod to contain 1 torpedo bomber, 2 bombers, and 1 fighter squadron instead of 2 torpedo bombers, 1 bomber, and 1 fighter squadron. So now you get 1 torpedo bomber, 2 dive bombers, and 1 fighter squadron on the Type 5 modification. And this gets into all the Japanese aircraft carrier changes. So if you guys are not interested in the Japanese aircraft carriers, move along. Check back in about 3 minutes. I'm doing the best I can, folks. So the Zuho has got another aircraft change. 2 torpedo bombers, 1 bomber, 1 fighter instead of 3 torpedo bombers, 1 bomber, and 0 fighters. The Ryuho has a detection change from 9 kilometers to 9.9 kilometers. They also have some aircraft squadron composition changes for Type 6, which 1 torpedo bomber, 2 dive bombers, 1 fighter squadron instead of 2 torpedo bombers, 1 bomber, and 1 fighter squadron. Change of the composition of Type 6 Mod 2, 2 torpedo bombers, 2 bombers, 1 fighter instead of 3 torpedo bombers, 2 bombers, and 0 fighters. Again, more changes, so I'm not going to read through all these, the hell with it. Basically, guys, the Japanese are going to start getting fighter squadrons, so they're not all attack heavy. They've got some fighters in there. As you get up through them, you'll see, for example, the Shokaku has changed. The Type 8 Mod 2 flight control contains 2 torpedo bombers, 2 dive bombers, 2 fighter squadrons instead of 3 torpedo, 3 bomber, and 0 fighter. So you're starting to be able to get some Japanese fighter planes in a little earlier in the grind on the ships. Moving along here, the Kongo, the Fuso, the Nagato, and Amagi have added an intermediate B hull as a researchable module. The Atago has corrected a misprint in the text of the torpedo description previously listed in port. The Type 90 Mod 1 instead of the Type 93 Mod 1. The characteristics of the actual torpedo itself remains unchanged. The Yabari gets the defensive fire consumable for medium range engagements, which includes their heavy anti-aircraft machine guns. The Hashidate as a decreased number of hit points in the stock hull from 10,700 to 8,800, and decrease in the number of hit points in the top hull from 12,400 to 10,300. The Furutaka reduced the rudder shift time for the top hull by 1.1 seconds, so you'll be able to turn the Furutaka a little faster. The Furutaka has also changed its research system. They've implemented a straightforward gun research procedure whereby all guns will be researched successively. They've added Type 8 Mod 2 torpedoes as a researchable module as well. The Miyoko has increased the probability of fire on the ship by 6.6%. Damn, man, that thing was already a tinderbox too. So the Miyoko has an increase in fire chance by 6.6%. The Kitakami has added the engine boost consumable. The Kitakami has also increased the effective aiming angles for torpedo tubes. Let's see here. For the cruiser Megami, they've reduced the aiming speed of the main turrets and reduced the hit points of these turrets by 20%. The Kongo, Fuso, Nagato, and Amagi also added me. I've already got that intermediate researchable hulls thing talked about. The Miyoko decreased the reload time of the main battery guns by 2 seconds. That's pretty good. So you get faster reload on the Miyoko guns. The Yamato has reduced the chance of fire on the ship by 3.3%. The Megami decreased the probability of fire on the ship by 6.6%. The Megami also decreased the traverse speed of the 155mm guns from 4.5 degrees per second to 3.5 degrees per second. The number of the gun's hit points was reduced by 20%. So they're turning faster, that's for sure. The Minakaze Mitsuki, the detection distance was increased by 0.3 kilometers. Also for the Minakaze Mitsuki, increased detectability distance from 5.94 to 6.2 kilometers. The Minakaze excluded the Type 89 torpedoes from the researchable modules. They have decreased the aiming angles of the torpedo tubes on the Minakaze. It looks like they did a huge nerf on the Minakaze. That's what I'm getting out of this. The Furutaka increased the rate of fire and main battery traverse speed. That's cool. They've reduced the rudder shift time in the Furutaka. They've increased the traverse speed of the main guns from 4 degrees per second to 5 degrees per second. That's the 200mm guns. They've increased the traverse time of the 203mm guns from 4 degrees per second to 5 degrees per second. The reload time of the guns was decreased from 17 seconds to 15 seconds on the Furutaka as well. For the Murmansk, for the Russian ships, of which basically it's the Murmansk at this point, the Aurora doesn't really count. The shells for the 152 armor-piercing Mark 27 Mod 2 was renamed into the 152 armor-piercing Mark 27 Mod 8. The actual characteristics of the shell remain exactly the same. They've introduced a new mode for aircraft. Let's talk about that briefly. They've added an alternative attack mode for fighter squadron. It's called the Air Squadron Assault, and it's activated by clicking on the squadron and then pressing the Alt and left mouse button. When you activate that Alt left mouse button command, an air squadron carries out an assault on a particular area of the map. Going at very high speed, fighters fly straight through the designated area, delivering massive fire at targets. All air squadrons, including allied ones that happen to be within the impact area, will take damage. So if there's a congregation of enemy attack aircraft and you designate your fighter squadron to do this air squadron assault in the area where the enemy fighters are congregating, when they fly through that patch on the map, they will shoot up apparently like crazy. They'll just go, berserker and shoot everything there. If you happen to have another fighter squadron or another one of your flight squadrons traveling through the same area, it will take damage at the same time. They've added aircraft fire visualization in the form of gun tracers. They fixed an incorrect display of torpedo cone during torpedo attack in auto mode. So apparently they've changed how the aiming cone is displayed during a torpedo attack in automatic mode. Now fighter squadrons cannot be ordered to perform several consecutive attacks at one time by pressing and holding shift. They've changed the turning radius for all aircraft. The average values remain close to those in the previous version. It's not going to make that huge of a difference. It's probably not even going to be noticeable to most of you. They've increased the ammunition capacity for all fighters, which is good. They've introduced a twofold increase on average in the self-defense power of all attack aircraft. Wow. So, rear gunners on dive bombers and torpedo bombers have basically got a twofold increase in their defensive power. Wow. Normalize the self-defense power of all fighters in order to avoid significant variations across levels. I don't think that's going to be that much noticeable either, guys. So that's pretty much it for the big stuff on the ships and gameplay, things like that. There's a couple of more things to talk about, which I think are pretty cool. And so I'm going to go through those real quick, and then we're just about finished. So the reporting system, which I thought was really good and I really enjoyed, where you can give compliments to players as well as to complain about players. Well, they're implementing an automatic system for handling reports regarding chat misbehavior, which is also capable of issuing chat bans to players. So, you know, be aware that if you're potty mouth in chat, there is a chance that you will automatically get a chat ban. And they're, you know, if people report you for being a potty mouth, like I'm sure they do me, you're probably going to get a chat ban. But don't forget, also, this reporting system, at the end of the game, you can compliment players. You can compliment players on your team. You can compliment players on the enemy team for good play, for good sportsmanship, whatever. And so, you know, we ought to all be using that more, because I think they're going to make something out of that later on, whether it's game karma or something. I think if you know, accrue a number of, you know, attaboys from other players in the game, I think good things are going to happen to you. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but on the replay that you're watching now, if you look at the island to the port side of the ship, you will see trees. And they have added foliage to the following maps: North, Big Race, Islands, Hotspot, New Dawn, Two Brothers, and Fault Line. So all of those maps, again, that is North, Big Race, Islands, Hotspot, New Dawn, Two Brothers, and Fault Line, along with the new one called Strait and the Solomon Islands map. Those two will also have trees on them. So in addition to seeing little fishing villages, you also see them covered in foliage now, which I think is very cool. They've added some improvements and made some changes to sound. They've made an overall improvement of the sound effects in the game. They've reworked the sounds of nearby flying shells. They've improved the sound effects of jet-powered aircraft like I've ever seen those. And they've added some new music to the game as well. I don't usually play with the music on, but they've added some new music tracks, so maybe I'll take a listen. As far as the interface is concerned, guys, in the port display, the ship's characteristics now take into account the equipment mounted on the ship. So, yay! If you have changed things on the ship, the characteristics in the panel to the right-hand side of your screen will take into account the characteristics of whatever you have mounted on the ship. That's good news. They've improved the visualization of the 3D HUD elements. They've implemented the display of licenses in the game client. They've added an IME language panel, which can be enabled in settings. They've added input support for Chinese, Korean, and Japanese languages. They've improved the summary tab in the player's profile, which is great. I've always thought that needed improvement. They've implemented the option to display battle statistics separately for co-op, standard, and ranked battles, which I'm pleased with as well. So now you will be able to see how you perform in each of the different modes, basically. Next thing is some system changes. They've added a change which will substantially simplify aiming at a ship moving over the border of the map, which is called kiting. So any of these players that are using the boundary to alter the trajectory of their ship to make it harder for you to hit them, there's now a change that will simplify your aiming at that ship. I haven't seen that yet, but I can't wait to. The daily number of reports and complaints available to a player is increased to 5. And the daily number of reports and complaints that a player would need to accumulate to get banned from chat was increased to 10. So if there's somebody that you complain about 10 times in various games that you see them in for being a potty mouth in chat, you got to hit them 10 times for them to get banned. So that is the big deal for all of the changes in this patch that is out there now. The big news again, of course, is that on September 17th the game goes live to the public I mean, it's basically live to the public now, right? But anyway, it's going live to the public on the 17th of September, which is also the day that we will get to see on the North American server the Turpets. So on the 17th, they're finally dropping the beta tag from their game and releasing it into the wild. Be prepared to greet with a salute the new captains pouring in. For all you grizzled sailors, help these guppies find their grid squares. Based on our open beta success with World of Warships, Wargaming is poised to launch their next big game. With 2 million participants and the average player spending 3 hours a day in game, they've got an armada of sea captains ready to take the helm in ultimate naval combat. Again, ranked battles will start on September 17th. That's the first season. Get ready to dive into intense 7x7 domination matches and pit yourself against captains of equal skill. Secure victories to amass stars and rank up to earn rewards along with the oh-so-coveted bragging rights. The Turpets is en route. This one-of-a-kind torpedo-equipped battleship will be available for purchase in the North American Premium Shop on launch day. Keep your eyes open for more information in the coming weeks. This next few days, by the way, guys, if you're playing, you have a 2 XP first win bonus, which starts Saturday, September 5th at 7:20 Eastern Time in the morning and goes until Tuesday, September 8th at 7:20 Eastern Time in the morning. So each of those days for each ship you have in port, the first battle you win for each of those ships will get you twice the normal XP. And guys, that's it for the news. I do appreciate you listening and tuning in. You can read more about this at shipcomrade.com, which has just reached its 100,000th view. So thanks to everyone for its support, your support of Ship Comrade. You can get all the information on the patch notes from shipcomrade.com. I do look forward to seeing you guys out there. Come play with us. World of Warships, which is open to the public on the 17th of September. In the meantime, I hope you guys enjoy this. Appreciate you listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will catch you on the next one. Take care, everybody.